Chapter 2 of Darwin's Dragons. Lightning split the dark clouds above us, and thunder shook my bones. From the first lurch of the rowboat, Mr. Darwin's face turned the colour of ship's porridge, as it always did in any sort of swell. But as we pitched and rolled our way towards the Beagle, it was Robbins's stony face that scared me. He and Tanner were rowing with all their strength, but the waves were rising, the wind sharper than the boatswain's whip, and it was hard to say if we were any closer to the ship. I bailed rainwater from the bottom of the boat, but it poured in almost as fast as I could throw it out. I slid Scratch round to my back, glad I had sealed the case with wax. Each wave was a galloping hillock of water for us to climb, and it seemed impossible we were still afloat. But the sailors rowed on, and I tried to tell myself that it was harder to sink a boat than it looked. Mr. Darwin's linen shirt was plastered to his skin, his face as white as the foaming waves. He reached out to me, then scrambled across the bench and threw himself to the side of the boat to avoid his guts. He clung to the edge, his back heaving, and I moved over to help. But just as I did, we climbed a mountain of a wave, and the master pitched forward, his hand slipping. Before I even had a time to call out, he flipped over into the sea. "Man overboard!" Robbins yelled. I snatched up the rope curled in the bottom of the rowboat, coiling it around my hand. And another shout as I threw the other end of the rope behind me. I leapt into the raging sea after my master. The waves hauled me under and then drew me up, gasping, and I realised too late that I was a raw cove because I'd likely not be able to save myself, let alone Mr. Darwin. "Robbins," I called, "Robbins!" I felt the fiddle case rise at my back, still strapped tight across my chest. Everything was a blur of grey and white. Was this the end? Then the line pulled taut in my hand. I collected my senses and kicked hard, trying to make out the silhouette of Robbins and the boat. And there, Mr. Darwin's white shirt. He wasn't lost, not yet. We had a chance. I must not let go. Both our lives depended upon it. I struck out with my free hand. Mr. Darwin spotted me and floundered in my direction, tossed on the chop and foam like a cork, until by some force of luck, the swell clashed us into each other. I clung to him fiercely with my legs and we were dragged under. We whirled and tumbled underwater before being flung to the surface again. By some miracle, we were still together. "Hold on to the rope, sir!" I shouted. He didn't seem to hear me. His eyes were almost closed, and he hadn't so much as coughed since the last ducking. I held us both to the rope with one hand and slapped his waxy cheek hard. "The rope, sir! Mr. Darwin!" His eyes opened, but they were wide and glazed. I couldn't hold on to him for much longer. "Charles Darwin!" I yelled in his face with all my strength. The master seemed to awaken then, spluttering out water, and his eyes sprung to life and met mine. He reached out, and I snatched his hand and wrapped his stiff fingers around the rope, then his other hand next to it. I jerked hard, and Robbins tugged back. Then we were being hauled one way by the sea, but the sea was sucking at us the other, trying to keep us for itself. But we were moving. All we had to do was hold on, and we'd make it. The next whitecap battered me sideways, and one of my hands was torn from the rope. Mr. Darwin's feet crashed into my shoulder, and then my other hand was slipping. And even when I gritted my teeth and crushed my fist tight, I couldn't keep hold. The sea wrenched the line from my hand, and I was tumbled deep. I spun until my lungs burnt in an airless world of churning froth. And when I finally surfaced, gasping, neither Mr. Darwin, the rope, the rowboat, nor the Beagle were anywhere in sight.